بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Allah.
The full name of Hazrat Bibi Khadija is Khadija-Tul-Kubra. Observing her purity and virtues, the people of Arabia gave her the title of Tahira. Due to being the revered wife of the esteemed Prophet Muhammad Mustafa Ahmad Mujtaba, peace be upon him, we remember her by the name of Umm-ul Hazrat Bibi Khadija-Tul-Kubra, may Allah be pleased with her. Umm-ul means mother of the believers. All the wives of our Prophet are called Umm-ul. They are considered the mothers of all Muslims. Hazrat Bibi Khadija was born into a prominent merchant family in Mecca. Her father's name was Khuwaylid bin Azad, who belonged to the Quraysh tribe. Khuwaylid was a serious, wise, generous, and righteous man. He was a very wealthy merchant in Mecca. Hazrat Bibi Khadija's mother's name was Fatima, a beautiful, righteous, and pleasant woman. Bibi Khadija grew up in wealth and comfort. Her father's magnificent mansion was near the Kaaba. This mansion was tall, built of mud, and had 2 stories. In this grand building, traders from nearby countries used to come and stay from morning till evening. Sometimes they would come to seek business advice from Khuwaylid, and sometimes they would visit due to his prominence. Meeting him was considered an honor. Bibi Khadija was beautiful and possessed many virtues like her parents. Everyone praised her. She was so pure that, due to her high character, her family was renowned in Arabia. She married a wealthy merchant from Mecca, Abdullah bin Zurar Tamimi. They had 2 sons, one named Hala after his father and the other named Hind. Although Hind is a girl's name, it might have been chosen to ward off the evil eye. Both children were still young when their father passed away, and Bibi Khadija became a widow. A few years later, Bibi Khadija married another wealthy merchant named Atiq Bini. They had a daughter named Hind. This child was still young when her father passed away. Bibi Khadija had not yet recovered from this grief when her father, Khuwaylid, also passed away. Before his death, he entrusted all his business affairs to his wise and intelligent daughter, Bibi Khadija. Bibi Khadija's brothers were killed in family feuds, as in those times, families in Arabia would often fight over trivial matters. Now, Bibi Khadija was left alone. On one hand, she had the responsibility of 3 young orphan children.
There was the burden of raising the children. On the other hand, there was the concern of managing the family business, which was extensive and spread across many countries. Lady Khadija, with thoughtful consideration, took on the responsibility with courage and determination and tried to manage the family business. Arabs generally transported their goods themselves from one place to another, selling them in other countries and making profits. Arabia is a desert country, and camels can easily traverse the desert, which is why camels are called the ships of the desert. Arabs mostly transported their goods on camels. These caravans were called karwan. Often, wealthy merchants did not travel with the caravan themselves but sent a trusted business representative on their behalf, who conducted business for their owner and received compensation for their efforts. Lady Khadija was considered one of the greatest merchants. Due to her wealth, she was called the Queen of Merchants. She was so wealthy that her trade goods in the caravan often exceeded those of all other merchants combined. During travels, the curtains of her tents were silk, the ropes were gilded, and the pegs were gold. Lady Khadija's wealth continued to increase day by day. Lady Khadija's representatives usually accompanied the caravans on business trips and conducted business on her behalf. The work was going well, but now there was a need for an honest, loyal, hard-working, efficient, experienced, and noble representative to manage the expanding business responsibly. At that time, the honesty of Muhammad, peace be upon him, was well known. People called him al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy, and entrusted him with their valuable possessions without any fear. He was a hard-working, intelligent, and sincere young man. He had a peace-loving nature and despised disputes. He always acted justly, was a compassionate person, and was always ready to help the weak, the poor, and the oppressed. No one left his door empty-handed, yet he would say that working hard and earning through labor is much better than begging. The Prophet, peace be upon him, highly valued the rights of neighbors and always helped them. Whatever promise he made, he fulfilled. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, belonged to the Quraysh tribe, which was divided into 10 clans, each with its own leader. In the 5th generation of Quraysh, around 70, the leader of one of the clans was Qusay. His profession was trade. Due to his wisdom and intelligence, the clans of Quraysh considered him their ruler. Qusay controlled the whole of Hijaz. Qusay had entrusted many governmental responsibilities to various Quraysh clans, but major responsibilities remained with him, such as keeping the keys to the Kaaba and its maintenance. Maintaining the Kaaba was a highly respected responsibility. During the pilgrimage season, this responsibility increased significantly. People from other nearby countries, in addition to the Arabs, came for the pilgrimage. Qusay had to host and serve all the pilgrims according to their ranks. He had large water reservoirs built for their use. As the caretaker of the Kaaba, all offerings and tributes went to him. The Arabs held the Kaaba in high esteem. It was considered the house of Allah, built by the command of Allah by Prophet Ibrahim with the help of his elder son, Prophet Ismail, for the worship of the one true God. After its construction, both father and son performed the first pilgrimage in history and offered sacrifices. This event took place more than 4,000 years ago. After Prophet Ibrahim, Allah sent different prophets to various nations at different times. These prophets taught good morals and virtues. However, people would remember these teachings for a few days before being led astray by Satan and committing evil deeds, causing great suffering to all his prophets. This continued for many years. In Qusay's time, people still considered the Kaaba as the house of Allah but forgot that Prophet Ibrahim built it solely for the worship of Allah. They created idols from clay and stone, worshipping them and making vows to them. Every tribe had its idol, many of which were placed inside the Kaaba. The idol of the Quraysh was named Umm-ul. The Arabs indulged in other vices as well. They drank alcohol and, under its influence, quarreled and fought over trivial matters, often killing one another. Human life had no value, and vengeance sometimes led to wars lasting for years. They also gambled, even staking their wives in bets. Women had no status. A man could marry as many women as he wished, and a woman was considered part of her husband's property, often handed over to his heirs upon his death. Women had no inheritance rights, and the birth of a daughter was viewed with disdain, leading to the practice of burying newborn girls alive. Slaves and bondmaids were in a deplorable state, and orphans had no one to care for them, with people usurping their wealth.
Despite these shortcomings, the Arabs had some admirable qualities. They were brave and known for their generosity, although often their bravery was used to outdo one another, and their generosity was usually for show, throwing lavish feasts for the rich but neglecting the poor. Nevertheless, not all Arabs were bad, some were good. Qusay passed away near Mecca, leaving behind 4 sons, Abd al-Dar, Abd Manaf, Abd Uzza, and Abd Qusay. Responsibilities were again divided, and the service of the Kaaba was assigned to Abd Manaf's son, Hashim. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, descended from Hashim's lineage, while Lady Khadija's father was from the lineage of Abd Uzza. Hashim performed his duties excellently. Due to his intelligence, hard work, and understanding, his trade flourished. Every year, Hashim sent 2 caravans, one to Yemen in winter and another to Syria in summer. Hashim passed away around 510 CE during a trading trip to Syria, leaving behind a son named Shaiba. This child was raised by Hashim's brother, Muttalib, leading people to call him Abd al-Muttalib, the servant of Muttalib. After Muttalib's death, Abd al-Muttalib became the caretaker of the Kaaba. His generosity and virtues were well known. He was a noble young man, and the leaders of the Quraysh tribes assisted him in administrative matters. Abd al-Muttalib had 10 sons, including Abu Talib, Hamza, Abbas, Abu Lahab, and Abdullah. Abd al-Muttalib arranged the marriage of his younger son Abdullah to the beautiful girl Amina bint Wahb from the prestigious Banu Zara family, who lived in Medina. A few months after the marriage, Abdullah went on a trade journey to Syria and passed away along the way. Amina was devastated by his death, and she was pregnant at the time. When Abraham was building the Kaaba, he prayed to Allah to grant him a messenger from his lineage who would recite Allah's verses to the people and teach them good morals, purifying their hearts. The time for the acceptance of Ibrahim's prayer had arrived, and our Prophet was born in Mecca on a Monday morning in the month of April. O Prophet, peace be upon you. O Messenger of Islam, peace be upon you. O Beloved of Islam, peace be upon you. May Allah's blessings be upon you. Abd al-Muttalib was deeply saddened by the death of his young son, but was very pleased with the news of his grandson's birth. He took the orphaned grandson to the Kaaba. The grandfather named the grandson Muhammad, praiseworthy. Amina named him Ahmad, as she had received a prophecy about this name. In Arabic, the period of breastfeeding is called the Rida period. In the prominent families of Arabia, children were breastfed by nomadic women and were also raised by them for several years. These Bedouin women would come from the villages to take care of the children. There were two main reasons for this practice. The first was that breastfed children grew up strong and resilient, adapting well to all weather conditions and hardships. Therefore, they became brave, fearless, and strong. The second reason was that the Bedouin tribe spoke pure Arabic, and the Arabs took great pride in their language. Thus, they preferred to have their children raised by Bedouin women. Our Prophet was nurtured by a Bedouin wet nurse from the Banu Sa'ad tribe, named Halima Sa'adiyah. Through the Prophet's blessings, Halima's household flourished, and Allah's mercy began to flow abundantly. The Prophet remained with Halima for over 5 years, before being returned to Amina. A few months later, Amina took her orphaned son to Medina, where her relatives lived. Amina's family was known as Banu Bakr. There was also Abdullah's grave in Medina. On their return journey, Amina fell seriously ill and passed away at a place called Abwa. Umm-ul, who was Amina's maid, took the child back to Mecca. At that time, the Prophet was 6 years old. Umm-ul handed the child over to his grandfather. Abd al-Muttalib embraced his orphaned grandson with great affection and raised him lovingly. When the boy turned 8, Abd al-Muttalib also passed away. Before his death, Abd al-Muttalib entrusted his 8-year-old grandson to Abu Talib, who was Abdullah's elder brother. It is said that when the grandfather's funeral was carried, the 8-year-old orphaned grandson walked alongside the procession, weeping. From the time the Prophet became aware, he saw his beloved uncle going on trade journeys with caravans. When he was 12 or 13 years old, he asked his uncle if he could also join a trade journey. The uncle fulfilled his wish. During this trade journey, the caravan stayed in the famous port city of Basra in Syria. The majority of Basra's population was Christian, and prominent Christian priests resided there. One of the senior priests had read in the holy books about a prophet who would come as a mercy to the world and would be the final prophet. When the senior priest heard that the caravan from Mecca had arrived, he came to meet the caravan's traders and spoke to them at length. He was very pleased to meet the Prophet and became convinced that this boy would grow up to be the final prophet. The priest advised Abu Talib to take great care of the child. Abu Talib continued to go on trade journeys, taking goods to Basra, Yemen, and Syria. The Prophet accompanied him on a few journeys. Until then, the Prophet saw a world where slaves and servants were prevalent, where the rich oppressed the poor, and orphans and widows were mistreated. There was no support for the helpless. Although Mecca was wealthy, with plenty of gold and silver, the rich were powerful, and the poor were naked and hungry. The Prophet learned through his travels that oppression and injustice existed everywhere, even in Syria, Yemen, and Basra, where slaves were sold like commodities and the rich continued to oppress the poor. He saw the stark contrast between the wealthy and the poor and noted that women had no respect or status. He observed his uncle and other traders engaging in buying and selling, saw the wealth and poverty, and experienced the markets filled with goods. Each journey provided him with new experiences. He had a compassionate nature and saw his own suffering in the suffering of others. Gradually, Abu Talib's financial condition worsened, and he stopped going on trade journeys. Observing the state of the household, the Prophet began taking care of sheep, including those belonging to others, which he enjoyed. In his childhood, he had tended to the sheep of Halima Sa'adiyah. At that time, Abu Talib received news that the famous merchant of Mecca, Queen Khadija, needed a trustworthy person to manage her business. She was looking for someone of high integrity to handle her affairs. Abu Talib discussed this with his family and mentioned that the wealthy merchant offers 2 camels as compensation for managing her business. Given your virtues and family status, she might even offer double the compensation. Abu Talib's financial situation was known to you, so you immediately agreed to manage Khadija's business, hoping it would bring in some income. Abu Talib went to the wealthy merchant and mentioned his nephew. Khadija had heard praise of your virtues. Every child in Mecca recognized you and regarded you as a friend. the Arabs respected your truthfulness. The wealthy merchant was pleased and agreed. The compensation was settled, and you took on the role of managing her business. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, set out with Khadija's trade goods towards Syria. You had already been to these lands with your uncle and were familiar with trade practices. Due to your honesty and integrity, other merchants were pleased to trade with you. Thus, your goods were quickly sold, and you returned with substantial profit. Khadija had sent a servant named Maysara with you for this journey. Upon returning to Mecca, Maysara spoke highly of you, mentioning that you would become a great person because during the journey, clouds always shaded you. Seeing this, a Jewish rabbi prophesied that you would be the prophet mentioned in the heavenly books. Khadija was amazed at the prophet and had never received such a large profit before. The business continued to prosper, with each caravan returning more successful than the last. Khadija's respect for you grew daily. One night, Khadija had a dream in which the sun descended into her house, and its light spread far and wide. She shared this dream with her cousin, Waqia bin Nawfal, who was a learned man and had converted to Christianity, studying the heavenly books extensively. He was pleased with the dream and said that you would marry a man whose reputation would spread far beyond Arabia. Waqia also said that it was very likely that you were the awaited prophet. Khadija kept this dream to herself, but her admiration for Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, grew. She would often sit on her rooftop in the evening, waiting for you. One evening, when you returned from business and dismounted from your camel, Khadija noticed that your face was radiant with light and your eyes had a special sparkle. Seeing you in this state, she thought that perhaps her dream was connected to you and that you might be the prophet foretold by Waqia and the Jewish rabbi. Khadija began to see new virtues in you daily, virtues unmatched by anyone in Mecca. Khadija, herself a remarkable woman, was sought in marriage by many prominent traders of Mecca, who were wealthy and held high social status. However, Khadija rejected all proposals, as she was not interested in wealth or status. What she sought was sincerity, goodness, truthfulness, and spiritual elevation, which she found in you. There is no doubt that both Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Khadija belonged to the Quraysh tribe, descendants of Ismail, making their family the highest in Arab society. However, Abu Talib's financial situation was not good, and you were working as an employee for the wealthy merchant. Marrying you would require Khadija to make many sacrifices. Khadija's previous husbands were prominent traders of Mecca. Marriages in those times were often based on financial status. For a long time, Khadija kept her feelings to herself. Eventually, she discussed you with her close friend Nafisa, sharing her dream and its interpretation, given by Waqia. Nafisa suggested that if Khadija liked you, she should marry you. Khadija agreed that she liked you dearly, but was unsure how to proceed. Nafisa promised to help in this matter. A few days later, Nafisa met you and asked why you weren't married. You replied that you were poor and couldn't think of marriage. Nafisa then asked if you would agree to marry a wealthy, beautiful, and virtuous woman. You asked who such a woman could be, and Nafisa replied that it was Khadija. You were surprised and wondered why Khadija would agree to marry you. Nafisa said if Khadija agreed, would you be willing to marry her? Knowing Khadija's virtues, you agreed if she was willing. Upon hearing your consent, Nafisa went to Khadija and informed her that soon Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would send a proposal through his family elders to Khadija's uncle. Khadija was overjoyed. On the appointed day, Abu Talib, along with Hamza and some other members of the family, took the proposal to Khadija's uncle, Ammar bin Asad. Khadija had already informed her uncle about the visit and had given her consent. A few days later, the marriage took place between the orphan Abdullah and the wealthy merchant Khadija-Tul-Kubra. Abu Talib conducted the marriage ceremony, and, following Ammar bin Asad's advice, 500 gold coins, golden ashrafis, were set as the dowry. At that time, the Prophet was 25 years old, and Khadija was 15 years older than him. This was a significant event. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then moved into Khadija's home, which was also close to the Kaaba. The marriage proved very auspicious for both parties. They embarked on a new phase of life together. Khadija considered herself extremely fortunate, as Allah had granted her a husband who was the best of humanity. She was truly a supportive partner in her husband's life. After the marriage, the wealthy merchant dedicated herself to her husband's happiness. She was very intelligent, wise, and kind, and quickly understood her husband's temperament, striving to make him happy in every possible way. Before the marriage, Khadija already had a sense of the Prophet's greatness and spiritual elevation. She knew that he abhorred idols and believed only in one God. Khadija also disliked idols and was aware of your social work, always ready to help the oppressed. As a wealthy merchant, she knew that her responsibilities would change after marriage. She prepared herself to manage these responsibilities by dedicating all her wealth to her husband and asking him to spend it as he pleased. She gladly donated generously in Allah's name, and fulfilling her husband's happiness became her life's mission. Khadija was known for her hospitality and generosity, being the daughter of a generous father. Her home was always filled with guests. Her family members held you in high regard and often visited you. Khadija had now fully devoted herself to managing the household, keeping her table open for guests. The home became a sanctuary for the needy, ensuring no one left empty-handed. After the marriage, your activities changed. You no longer traveled with the caravans, but instead gave trade advice to your agents. Many of Makkah's leading merchants sought your advice. You would quickly solve their problems with your God-given skills. Major traders and wealthy people regarded it as an honor to seek your counsel. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, always had a deep affection for children. He loved Khadija's children dearly. Her eldest son, Hind, considered you his father, often saying, "Khadija is my mother, and Muhammad is my father." Once, Khadija's cousin gave her a slave boy named Zaid bin Harith as a gift. This was considered a significant gift. The boy was traveling with a caravan, which was robbed, and he was sold into slavery. Khadija gave this slave to her husband, who freed him. Zaid's father came to take him back, but Zaid, having been so impressed by your treatment, chose to stay with you and serve you devotedly. One of the significant achievements of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, after marrying Khadija was a wise and correct decision that prevented bloodshed in Mecca. Due to rain and floods, the foundations of the Kaaba had weakened. The Quraysh decided to reinforce the building. All the tribes of Arabia gathered in Mecca to participate in this religious task and divided the work among themselves. However, a dispute arose when it came to placing the black stone, a prestigious task done by Ibrahim during the Kaaba's construction. Everyone wanted to place it. The custom in Arabia was to resolve such disputes by having the first person to enter the sacred precinct make the decision. The next morning, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the first to enter, and everyone was pleased. He spread his cloak on the ground, placed the black stone on it, and asked the leaders of each tribe to lift the cloak together. Then, he himself placed the stone in its place. Everyone was happy with this wise solution, and Khadija's heart was filled with joy and pride in your wisdom. Allah blessed Khadija with 2 sons and 4 daughters. Both sons passed away in childhood. Her eldest daughter, Zainab, married Khadija's nephew Abu al-As. The second daughter, Ruqayya, married Uthman, who later became the 3rd caliph. The third daughter, Kulthum, married Uthman after Ruqayya's death, leading to Uthman being known as Tul-Nurayn, the one with 2 lights. The youngest daughter, Fatima al-Zahra, married your cousin Ali bin Abi Talib, who later. In both moments of joy and prosperity, our Prophet, peace be upon him, did not forget the suffering of the oppressed and those in distress, both women and men. It saddened him to see that people did not worship one God. Instead, they worshipped idols made of clay and stone. Inside the sanctuary, there were 360 idols, and the largest idol was placed on the newly constructed roof of the Kaaba, named Kabul. Like Prophet Ibrahim, you also disliked idols. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, continuously tried to support the helpless with all his strength, but reforming the entire society was beyond his power. Therefore, he would reflect and seek Allah's help. Lady Khadija often saw him in a quiet corner of the house, deep in thought. Lady Khadija was well aware of her husband's kindness and humanitarianism. She provided him with all opportunities for tranquility, which was part of her duties. She gave her dear husband such moments of silence and peace. The more comfort she provided him, the happier she felt. They had been married for 15 years. He often went to the Haram Sharif to contemplate. Providence was preparing him for a great responsibility. 3 miles from Mecca, there is a mountain named Hira. Near its peak is a cave, called the Cave of Hira, now called the Cave of Noor. Our Prophet frequently went to this cave to sit alone and reflect. He generally spent the month of Ramadan there. Lady Khadija personally brought him food and sometimes also provided dry food, like barley water. One night during Ramadan, while our Prophet was engaged in the remembrance of Allah, an angel suddenly appeared to him. It was Jibril, who brought the message of Allah. The message from Allah is known as revelation. Gabriel loudly said, "Iqra, read." You were startled, because you did not know how to read. Gabriel recited a few verses from Surah Al-Alaq, Iqra. The meaning was, read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. Who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not. Gabriel then said again in a thunderous voice, to read. The Prophet said he could not read. Gabriel embraced him 3 times, and the knowledge of the 2 worlds was imparted to him. The verses Gabriel recited were immediately engraved on his heart. Overcome with fear, he looked around anxiously, but wherever he looked, Gabriel appeared to him. Gabriel informed him that he was an angel from the heavens, and that he had brought Allah's message. Allah had appointed him as his messenger. The Prophet, distressed and frightened, returned home and said to Lady Khadija, "Cover me with a blanket quickly." Lady Khadija covered him with a blanket. He was sweating with fear, and his loving wife dried his sweat. She comforted him and asked what was wrong. Lady Khadija's reassurance eased his anxiety and fear. He then gradually told Lady Khadija everything and said he was afraid and didn't know what had happened. He was very distressed. The situation was unusual and the word strange. But Lady Khadija had so much trust in her husband's truthfulness and had lived with him for 15 years, that she immediately believed everything he said without any doubt. She reassured her beloved husband and said there was no reason to be afraid. She told him not to worry, that God would not abandon him. She affirmed that he was honest, compassionate, and always ready to help the helpless, the weak, the oppressed, and those in distress. She praised his respect for elders and his consistent support for the truth, saying that Allah would assist him. The next day, Lady Khadija took her husband to Warqa bin Nawfal, who was a great scholar and had studied heavenly books. After listening to everything, Warqa declared that he was indeed Allah's messenger and the very prophet mentioned in the heavenly scriptures. He said, "I wish I were alive to help you when people would expel and oppose you." For a while, there was no further revelation. The prophet was deeply distressed, fearing that revelation might have ceased. However, it soon resumed. One day, Gabriel came and delivered Allah's message, to tell his close family and relatives about the religion. The Prophet first conveyed Allah's command to his close wife, Lady Khadija. Upon hearing Allah's command, Lady Khadija accepted Islam immediately. It is a great honor for women that the first person to accept Islam among all of Allah's servants was a woman, and that woman was Allah's righteous servant Khadija al-Tahira. After Lady Khadija's conversion, the Prophet's cousin Ali, his dear friend Abu Bakr Siddiq, and the freed slave Zayd bin Haritha also embraced Islam. Our Prophet quietly taught his people about Islam, and within 3 years, 40 people had converted to Islam. Among them were some of Abu Bakr's relatives and friends of Lady Khadija. During this time, the 5 daily prayers were not yet obligatory. The Prophet performed voluntary prayers, and Lady Khadija also joined him in these prayers. For a long time, they prayed secretly. One day, the Prophet received a divine message instructing him to openly proclaim the message and not to worry about those who deny it. Hearing this, the Prophet went to Mount Safa, one of the 2 hills in Mecca, the other being Marwa. The Prophet gathered the people and announced that Allah had appointed him as his messenger. The name of his religion was Islam. The role of a messenger is to deliver Allah's message to his servants. Muhammad Mustafa, peace be upon him, is both a servant of Allah and his messenger. He said that the message from Allah was to worship only one God, not to associate partners with him, to worship him alone, and to show mercy to the poor and weak. Treat everyone with kindness, be good to parents, relatives, the weak, and orphans. Do not oppress the helpless, slaves, or servants. Avoid evil deeds. Bad deeds will be rewarded with bad, and good deeds will be rewarded with good. The Prophet also explained to the Quraysh that Islam is a message of love and peace. The teachings of Islam emphasize avoiding discord and conflict, not killing unjustly, treating each other with kindness and love, speaking the truth, acting with justice, keeping promises, and not speaking ill of others behind their backs. Islam teaches respect for elders and compassion for the young, and it advocates equality, disregarding differences between rich and poor. The Quraysh did not like Islam. It was against their religion and included elements that threatened their power and wealth. They decided to suppress Islam from the start and prevent its rise. However, due to Allah's grace, the sincere efforts of his messenger, and the encouragement and support from Lady Khadija, Islam continued to spread. The companions of the Prophet, a handful of Muslims, actively participated in the propagation of Islam. When Islam began to spread, the Quraysh became fearful. Twice, they approached Abu Talib and complained about Muhammad, pbuh, saying that he insulted their idols and the religion of their ancestors. They asked Abu Talib to stop him, warning that if he did not, the consequences would not be good. The Quraysh even went to Muhammad, pbuh, and offered him worldly temptations, but the Prophet was not swayed. Frustrated and angry, the Quraysh returned after threatening him. When Islam began to spread, the Quraysh became fearful. Twice, they approached Abu Talib and complained about Muhammad, pbuh, saying that he insulted their idols and the religion of their ancestors. They asked Abu Talib to stop him, warning that if he did not, the consequences would not be good. The Quraysh even went to Muhammad, pbuh, and offered him worldly temptations, but the Prophet was not swayed. Frustrated and angry, the Quraysh returned after threatening him. He beloved Prophet would often be distressed seeing the Muslims suffer. The disbelievers would deny his message, insult his religion, and try to physically and mentally harm him. The Prophet would return home distressed, and his grief was alleviated by Khadija, who would confirm his words, offer him comfort, and strengthen his resolve. Realizing the Quraysh's enmity and their potential for revenge, Khadija once went out searching for the Prophet when he was delayed in returning home. She encountered a stranger who inquired about her. Alarmed, she returned home to find the Prophet safe. The Prophet explained that the stranger was Gabriel, who had conveyed peace to her from Allah, signifying her favor in Allah's eyes. Seeing the severe persecution, the Prophet advised the Muslims to migrate to a nearby country, Abyssinia. The term for leaving one's home for the sake of religion is hijra, and those who migrate are called muhajir. Within 2 years, many Muslims migrated to Abyssinia, including the Prophet's daughter Ruqayya and her husband. The Quraysh, furious at this, made every effort to persuade the king of Abyssinia to return the Muslim migrants. The Christian king of Abyssinia, named Negus, found many aspects of Islam appealing and granted the Muslims refuge in his country. In the 6th year of prophethood, Umar and Hamza embraced Islam, significantly strengthening the religion. The Quraysh, including the Prophet's uncle Abu Lahab, intensified their opposition and harassment. Abu Lahab would even incite boys to harass the Prophet. His wife would scatter thorns in the Prophet's path. To console the Prophet, Allah revealed Surah Al-Lahab, predicting severe punishment for Abu Lahab and his wife. When their efforts failed, the Quraysh decided to confine the entire Banu Hashim clan in a valley and boycott them. They vowed not to associate with them, trade with them, or provide them with any food or drink. This agreement was signed and hung on the Kaaba. Forced by this situation, Abu Talib took the Banu Hashim clan to a valley 3 miles from Mecca, known as the Shirbi of Abu Talib. The Banu Hashim lived in the valley under harsh conditions. One day, Khadija's nephew, Hakim bin Hizam, sent some wheat to Khadija, but Abu Lahab tried to intercept it. However, a compassionate Quraysh intervened, criticizing Abu Lahab and allowing the wheat to reach Khadija. Despite these hardships, Khadija never wavered. She endured 3 years in the valley with patience and resilience, although she felt deep sorrow seeing the Prophet's distress. She provided him with love, support, and prayers, helping him to persevere in his mission. The Prophet would convey Allah's message to people during the Hajj season, and some would believe while others would mock him. After 3 years, some compassionate Quraysh persuaded their families to end the boycott. The Prophet had predicted that the boycott agreement had been eaten by termites, except for the words "in the name of Allah." The Quraysh confirmed this, and the agreement was nullified, allowing the Banu Hashim to return to Mecca. Shortly after returning, Khadija fell ill and passed away at the age of 65. The Prophet buried her in the Al-Hajjuin graveyard, the first Muslim to be buried there. The loss of Khadija was a tremendous grief for the Prophet, as she had been his comfort, support, and confidant. The year of her death is known as the Year of Sorrow. Khadija's memory remained with the Prophet, who always spoke of her with great respect and love. He would send gifts to her friends and remember her often. Her life and sacrifices for Islam serve as an exemplary model for all Muslim women. May Allah grant our sisters the ability to follow in her footsteps, creating homes filled with peace and love, with the support of their husbands.